The foundation of the world of Berserk is based upon the esoteric concept of egregories. An egregory is, in this context, essentially, an idea or belief that is given form and power by a strong spiritual current generated by the collective unconscious. In other words, egregories are the imagination of man made manifest. The entirety of the astral plane is molded by this concept, and the magic and monsters of Berserk, which derive from it, are powered by its principle. The Odd, which is the life force employed by witches to cast spells, is also known as spiritual magnetism. Another way to interpret the esoteric foundations of the world of Berserk is to look at it through Plato's theory of forms, which posits that the physical world is shaped by, or rather, merely attempts to imitate ideas, which are the essence of all things. There are three realms within the world of Berserk. The ideal world, which is where the ideas exist in their pure, ethereal forms. The astral plane, which is where these ideas are given shape. And the physical world, which is the realm of the material, where only the strongest astral beings and forces can manifest themselves. All ideas, beliefs, thoughts, and feelings are inherently energetic, and their supreme culmination is God itself. The idea of evil, the self-proclaimed desired God, was created by the collective unconscious of mankind, and is continually nurtured by it. To be precise, the idea of evil, as well as the Godhead and its apostles, seemingly arose from the beliefs of the Holy See, which fused with and thus were corrupted by the evil of man in the ideal world. Just as the idea of evil is a corrupted version of God, the members of the Godhead are corrupted angels, and so on. The idea of evil was born out of man's wickedness, and it is a mechanism that ensures the proliferation of evil. Causality works in favor of evil, creating a cycle of ever-expanding darkness that engulfs the world like a plague. To break this cycle requires an indomitable will to resist unjust circumstances, to endure insurmountable suffering without surrendering to the temptations of the demonic that offer you a way out. The way Berserk portrays evil, or rather, more specifically, Satanism, is particularly interesting. The devil's temptation is Crowleyan in nature. Those who face great agony receive a proposal by the Godhead. If they abandon their humanity, they can receive the power to do what they will. As they ascend to demonhood, they are able to lord over humans, who to them become no more than meek vessels of flesh, and indulge in boundless hedonism. The ultimate prize, however, is their soul. They are destined to be sucked by the vortex of souls that feeds the ever-growing idea of evil. While the proposal must be accepted voluntarily, causality brings forth the circumstances that make the demonic temptation alluring in the first place, and the Godhead is free to groom and manipulate its targets. Some apostles still retain a tiny portion of their humanity, which to them becomes a source of weakness. The Count could not muster the strength to sacrifice his beloved's daughter, and his hesitation was the cause of his death. Berserk's narrative centers around this cycle of evil, this path towards darkness that is built by the malice of man. The culmination of the corrupted causality is the rise of the Antichrist, who will build a false paradise on earth and sacrifice the entire world to a false god. That Antichrist is, of course, Griffith. Griffith's sin is the most primordial and dangerous there is: pride. Griffith always desires to reach for the heavens, to have his own kingdom, which he would rule as a great king. To achieve his dream, he must build a Tower of Babel with the bodies of both follower and enemy, putting himself in front of and above all, abandoning his humanity in the process. The sole light within Griffith's dark soul is his brotherly friendship with Guts, the only man who can make him forget his dream. When Griffith lost everything, and his ambition became utterly unattainable, he had to make a difficult choice. Either sacrifice all the men who believe in him, along with his one and only friend, Guts, for the sake of his dream, or live miserably as a crippled mockery of his former self and die a tragic death. Griffith chose with his free will to become the Antichrist, though his destiny was orchestrated by causality, and he was subtly coerced by the Godhead. The Holy See prophesied for a long time the coming of a falcon of darkness that would call upon the world an apocalyptic age. Quote, "When the sun will have died 5 times, a red lake will appear at the west of the city with a name both new and ancient, and it will be the sign that the 5th angel is born. The angel shall be a falcon of darkness, both master of the sinful black sheep and king of the blind white sheep, the one who shall bring an age of darkness upon the world." End quote. The sun dying 5 times is, of course, a reference to the eclipse. The city with a name both new and ancient is Midland. The 5th angel, who shall be a falcon of darkness, is Femto. The sinful black sheep are the apostles who serve the falcon, and the blind white sheep are the ignorant men who are his subjects. That prophecy, which forecalled the coming of the Antichrist, was inverted by the holy men of Midland, who received a dream, which they thought to be divine revelation, about a falcon of light who will save the people from every calamity. While Griffith harbors an intense darkness within him, his exterior is perfectly symbolic of purity and light. He superficially represents Christ himself, the Holy Spirit, the white falcon of the Holy See. He is like Lucifer, who is externally perceived as a bringer of light, the son of the dawn, but is, in fact, the prince of darkness. In Griffith's own words, he who bears light exists in the deepest shadow. In contrast to him, Guts superficially represents darkness. He is like Dajjal, the Islamic Antichrist, a man blinded in one eye who bears the mark symbolic of the rejection of God. His interior, however, is the opposite. His relentless perseverance in the face of struggle can be equated to martyrdom, an act which stands in opposition to the sacrifice of others. Griffith and Guts are to each other like the yin is to the yang. Griffith's plan to become the king of the world necessitated his reincarnation. His journey mirrors that of Christ, and he had to die and reincarnate again in human form. For his rebirth to transpire, a great ritual where a strong current of negative thoughts and emotions is summoned alongside mass death must take place. The ritual was conducted in Albion, a place plagued with the burden of countless deaths by disease, famine, and execution, and that was an epicenter for satanic activity, human sin, and depravity. The ritual culminates in the symbol of the Antichrist, the brand of sacrifice, being drawn by a surge of fire. The body claimed by Griffith is that of the Moonlight Boy, a child that was born because of what was almost a satanic inversion of the Immaculate Conception. Upon regaining a body, Griffith had to test if he retained a shred of his humanity by meeting his former friend Guts, and he confirmed he did not. He went on to protect Midland from foreign invaders with an army of monstrous knights who obey him out of an inherent duty to serve the Antichrist. His adversary, Ganishka, was a conqueror and demon lord who wanted to rule the world, much like Griffith himself. He said, quote, "I control the vastest territory in the world. I won't relinquish it. Even if it's blood-smeared and defiled, this world belongs to me. I'll reign over this unclean world as a demon king and rebel against God." Ganishka's story serves as a microcosm of the evil in Berserk, and he mirrors Griffith in many ways. Ganishka was raised among the Kushan royalty and had to endure various ploys and attempts to assassinate him, for he was a contender for the throne. His own mother tried to poison him, as she favored his younger brother, who he ended up killing in revenge. He also set up the murder of his own father, the king, and usurped his rule. Like Griffith, he struck fear in his opponents and was considered peerless on the battlefield. Ganishka's son made an attempt on his life, just like he had done to his own father in the past. On the brink of death, he activated a Behelit that was given to him by the sorcerer Daiba and chose to sacrifice his son to ascend to demonhood. With the help of Daiba, who he had made his general and advisor, he began to produce a vast array of demon soldiers through a man-made Behelit with the aim of establishing a magical empire. The process behind the creation of the Daka, the demon soldiers born out of the man-made Behelit, operates under the same principle behind the birth of the Moonlight Boy. Pregnant women are taken to the man-made Behelit, and as the apostles impart them with their magical seed, the resulting baby turns demonic. Ganishka's plans would be thwarted by his rival, the true, predestined Antichrist, by the one chosen by causality to defeat him. After having suffered a humiliating defeat by Griffith, he enters the man-made Behelit himself to acquire immense power. He absorbed souls to feed himself, culminating in his transformation into a blind, stupid godlike demon of destruction. His skin becomes wooden, and his body takes the shape of a giant tree, his arms converting into a multitude of tentacles that resemble tree branches. He becomes an embodiment of calamity, the beast that will destroy the reason of the world, that is, bring forth Fantasia. As this demonic tree of calamity, a mindless Ganishka attacks foe and friend alike. Upon seeing the Falcon of Light, he wanders towards his own doom, like a moth to a flame. Such is the will of causality. In order to combat Ganishka and his newborn army of monsters, Griffith orders his demonic troops to transform into their true forms. This causes his human troops to cower in fear and suspect him to be a demon like the ones he leads. Sonia, the messenger of the Antichrist, whose name ironically means wisdom, projects her voice through telepathy and urges them to abandon their doubts, and the ignorant men become blind to the hell they see unfold before them, accepting Griffith as their leader. Beasts and men, wolves and sheep, holy and wicked, they were now hand in hand. Even Daiba is surprised that such blatant deception took hold of the men fighting alongside the demons. The Pope himself is surprised and filled with a radiant glow. All that was needed to fool mankind was a greater evil to unite everyone under the same banner, a supreme calamity orchestrated by causality that was doomed to be quelled by the Antichrist for all to see. A theatrical act of the devil. Griffith climbs on top of Ganishka's head and is ambushed by the school knight. The knight attacks Griffith with his Behelit sword, only for his swings to be redirected toward Ganishka, tearing an astral fissure so deep that the physical world fuses more profoundly with the astral plane. What was meant to be an axe that defied causality ended up following its current. And so, a vast magical empire is born out of thin air. Falconia, the kingdom of Griffith's dreams, has materialized. Ganishka's body, which was filled with an absurd quantity of souls, was vanquished, and in its place was left a divine tree in the shape of a helix. Fantastical creatures from myth and legend began to terrorize men of all lands, triggering a mass exodus toward Falconia, the only safe haven in the entire world. In the distant past, a mighty conqueror waged an incredible war against the warring peoples of his homeland with the aim of creating an empire. Through his horrific campaign, this conqueror subjugated the dozens of factions, became a king, and managed to create the first continental empire in history. Before his empire, small city-states and tribes waged incessant wars against each other in a period known as an age of rival warlords. The unification of the various cities and tribes brought with it unprecedented prosperity, and the peoples experienced an extraordinary age-old period of peace. This peace fostered depravity, however, and the empire and the king who ruled over it fell into immorality. The capital city of the empire, which was named Midland, for it stood in the middle of all the unified nations, became a melting pot of feasting and pleasure, and the king lived in the utmost extravagance, while imposing heavier and heavier taxes on his subjects. As a reaction to such corruption, a wise man founded a religion that preached a strict moral code and denounced the excesses of the powerful. The king orders this man's abduction. The man was taken to the Tower of Conviction, and there he was tortured to the brink of death. As he endured intense suffering, he prayed and prayed for divine retribution. His desperate desires were finally made manifest. He ascended to angelhood, turning into the first member of the Godhand, Void, and marks all of the people of Midland with the brand of sacrifice, including Gaiseric himself, the king who stood upon the abyss in the face of the first eclipse, together with 4 other angels, who interestingly parallel as their inversions the 4 kings of the world of pagan belief, who are said to be great beings who love and protect humanity, and are portrayed as angel-like as they appear in chapter 210. The wise men waged war against the corrupt empire. In this distant past, mankind had not yet abandoned pagan belief and had an affinity with magic. The vast empire of Gaiseric was a magical one. Both Griffith and Ganishka exist as parallels to him. The three of them dreamed of conquering the world and becoming rulers of magical empires, yet only two of them succeeded. Despite Midland's efforts, the wise man won the war, and Gaiseric only managed to escape as a wandering spirit. His physical body was no more. As a result of this great war, the wise man made a deal with the ruined empire. He founded the Church of the Holy See, a force that would rule alongside the king. The Tower of Rebirth is symbolic of this event, as it represents the abandonment of the depravity of yore as condemned by the Church, and the revival of the empire, which now follows the guidance of the Holy See. The Holy See orders the persecution of all remaining sorcerers and witches, for their magical ways were declared heretical. Though magic is and was extensively used for evil, the Holy See also has the occult motive of eliminating the most dangerous threat against itself. What was once a set of just and moral beliefs preached by wise men as a way of denouncing the excesses and depravity of an empire now had become a tool for a satanic plot, which aims to produce the Antichrist and call upon his false paradise on earth. The ideology of the church had been partially corrupted, as the wise man who preached it was himself warped by his suffering. The tower where the wise man was held captive and tortured in became known as the Tower of Conviction, for it was there that his conviction was tested, deepened, and manifested. It was there that it was twisted as well. It's possible that the name of the wise man was Albion, and that he was canonized as a saint after the incident. The city where his conviction was tested was renamed in homage to him. Now that I have covered the events that happened in the past and present of the story, I will proceed to speculate on how I believe it will end. At the current moment, Griffith's dream is nearly fulfilled. He has founded Falconia, a magical empire which he rules as the Antichrist. After the Golden Age arc, the story has mostly been about his ascension, and we have just reached the climactic heights of Griffith's journey. But he is fated to lose. Despite having causality on his side, the indomitable human spirit will triumph over the forces of evil. The satanic sacrifice of others for one's own sake can be countered by sacrificing yourself for the sake of others. And the temptation to surrender your soul and being to evil can be countered by persevering against all odds. Guts managed to escape his predestined fate and trick causality by bashing on, despite the tremendous difficulties. Thus, Guts has the means to oppose and overcome Griffith, for he is human, and has friends who love him. Besides the storytelling aspects that supports an eventual defeat of Griffith, the plot has already planted the seeds for such a scenario to make sense. The three major clues as to how it will unfold are the Dragon Slayer, the Moonlight Boy, and the World Tree. Guts' sword, the Dragon Slayer, has been infused with the malice of the thousands of beings it has slain. A shadow coils about it. It can be inferred that the sword will become increasingly magical as it slays more and more astral creatures. The Moonlight Boy is the result of Guts' seed within Casca that was tempered by Femto. He is a special, magical being who can only manifest himself during the full moon, and is otherwise fused with Griffith's vessel. The World Tree represents the archetypal divine tree of various faiths and mythologies. It is an immensely powerful egregore, for it is and has been fermented by many peoples of the world throughout history. It has the property of merging the physical world with the astral plane, plunging the world into a global interstice. Griffith's plan involves the release of the World Tree, with his reincarnation having been the first step to connecting the two realms. He proceeded by burning the spirit's trees, which absorbs the energy of the World Tree like parasites, stemming its growth. And lastly, causality arranged the birth and destruction of the calamitous demonic tree that Ganishka transformed into, and his body gave rise to the World Tree. What the synthesis of these three factors indicates is that Griffith could be killed by Guts' no special sword while possessing the Moonlight Boy. The scene where Rickard slaps Griffith's cheek is more than it appears at first glance. It potentially serves as foreshadowing for Griffith's demise at Guts' hands. Griffith's death could come as the result of a climactic duel between him and Guts, between the Falcon of Light and the Beast of Darkness, a duel that would mirror the events that triggered his downfall in the Golden Age. It's possible that this epic duel could occur at the climax of a magical war that threatens Falconia's existence, like the magical war that destroyed Gaiseric's empire 1,000 years before. And that this war results in a great sacrifice of the people of Falconia, as history almost repeats itself. Yet, this time, the forces of evil are finally bested by humanity. The other 4 members of the God Hand and their apostles could potentially be defeated by the Skull Knights, along with the members of Guts' party, the forces of a united Kushan Empire, and later with deserters of Falconia's army. It is possible even that this too mirrors the unfolding of the previous unholy war to an extent, with the 4 great angels that fought side to side with Void, the Wise Men, having been felled by warriors and magicians. The Dragon's Lair was originally forged as an affront. It is too big to be called a sword. Massive, thick, heavy, and far too rough. Indeed, it was a raw heap of iron. Such a weapon is unusable by men, as simple men would never be able to slay a dragon. Dragons are dragons because humans can't beat them. Guts, however, is the only man capable of achieving that feat. As the dragon he shall slay is Satan himself, the red dragon of the Book of Revelation. Just as he enters the sea god's dark interior and tore his heart open with his sword, he shall enter the abyss through his Behelit and slash the idea of evil, the heart of darkness. The collective struggle of the men who fight against Satan will generate a spiritual current so strong as to rupture causality, a desire to free themselves from the shackles of destiny so potent as to overpower fate. And from his very birth, Guts has embodied struggle itself. Man wields the sword so that he may die smiling in some far-off time beyond perception.